Can you see anything?
Mm-hmm.
All right, cool. All right, everybody. We had some technical difficulties today. Oh, okay. Well, you want to link it again? Let's try that one more time. We've had lots of technical difficulties today. Yeah, I unmuted the microphone now, so I think we're all good. Okay. So, hi again. This is our Tech Talk, and I am Ms. Johnson, and Mr. Hansen will come in just a moment and kind of talk to you as well. So we're both here. And today we're going to talk to you about putting your best digital foot forward. And so off we go. I am going to pull up our document so everybody can see. So every year we have done base camps, a variety of different kinds. We've been doing our freshman base camp for some time. I'm actually gonna, well, this is me. This is Mr. Hansen. Moving on. So we've done base camps for a while. I think we're probably going on 4 or 5 years, maybe even 6 for our freshman iPad base camp. And you can see kind of when we bring in freshmen, it's the idea of doing stations and different things like that and making sure that, you know, everybody kind of has a baseline of skills moving forward and not kind of forcing the teachers to be able to do all of those things, kind of making sure that, you know, Google Calendar set up, class folders, Notability, things like that. Our sophomore iPad base camp we did this year was also an iPad related one, but we really wanted to look at tools that would be used in class projects and things like that, and really allowing students to kind of familiarize themselves with that. Our senior base camp was done last year, and it was really just where Mr. Hansen and myself met with all of our seniors in their classes and talked about kind of transitioning. So, you know, their email, their accounts being shut off after they graduate, all of those sort of things. And then the junior base camp, we just really felt like we hadn't done anything for our juniors, and there were some topics that we felt like were very relevant. So that being said, I am going to step aside for a moment and let Mr. Hansen talk to you about half of that.
Well, good afternoon from Westlake High School campus. Thank you, one person, for joining us, and I think that one person is me. For those of y'all that are watching this as an archive webinar, we appreciate you coming on and checking us out. We periodically like to do these to just inform our community and the greater educational community about some things that we look into and things we share with our students. This last session, our junior iPad base camp, as Lisa was telling you, we really wanted to focus on the online life that students are creating for themselves. These are very valuable lessons for students, not just at a junior level, but obviously from a young age. I would highly recommend looking at some of these lessons on a simplified version, even as young as elementary age, to start talking about how students are using online environments and what kind of information they are putting on and how they are leaving a legacy for themselves on digital platforms. As we've seen throughout the entertainment world and political world, there are many times that information people post online can come back and perhaps do some negative things to them because they were negative things they posted or said. But sometimes those things can be misconstrued or taken out of context. So we had these purposeful conversations with our students, and we started the conversation by looking at some data that we gathered in our fall survey that we do with students every year. So this was our second year in a row. And we wanted to look, one of the questions was, we wanted to look at how students are using social media on campus. So particularly what apps are they using, how they are distracted by devices, their behaviors. We had about 650, Lisa, is that correct? About 650 respondents this year versus just over 400 last year. And so you can see the data, and the light teal is Westlake High School 2017 data. Westlake High School 2018 data is in the middle bar. And then the CSM, that's from a Common Sense Media research project where they took a random sample from around the country. And so they actually asked a similar question. So we were able to look at some of that data on everything other than Pinterest. But as you can see, that we are around the national trend. We're a little higher on Snapchat and Instagram usage and a little lower on Facebook. That part of it's interesting enough, but really what we're interested in is where those lines are reaching on the Snapchat and Instagram. So that's a percentage marker. So we're approaching 80% of our students admitting to actively using social media, no matter what the platform. That raised some concerns with Lisa and myself about how are we communicating best practices to our students? Are our teachers having these conversations? Are parents having these conversations at home? And what can we do to either add to those conversations or begin those conversations with our students here? And that prompted us to develop this portion of our junior iPad base camp. When we talk to our students about their online life, we really want them to understand who they are online. So in each of our classes, we had our students Google themselves. Pretty easy activity, something that you might recommend to anyone, especially if somebody's looking for a job or possibly applying to a university, which is how we frame this conversation. So we had students go on, and in different classes, we did it different ways. Some classes, we just had them open up a browser. In some classes, we actually, best practice is to go incognito or private, so that the algorithm linked to your account through Apple or through Google is not influencing what pops up in your browser selections or in your search selections. So you're actually going in as just a blank nobody. And so to search first and last name in quotations, so it searches that first and last name as a phrase. And we ask the students to use not necessarily their birth name, but their commonly used name. For example, I'm Christopher Hansen, but I would search Chris Hansen. And then to add on the phrase or the word Austin or Westlake. For myself, I added on the word Austin. I've been in Austin for 20 years. I've only been at Westlake High School for a year and a half. And then we searched ourselves. And of course, the most interesting thing is not necessarily the web links, especially if you're doing this for 3 minutes. It is the images that pop up. Many students were surprised to see that nothing popped up. And we told them, hey, that's a good thing, that people, when they web search you, they're not seeing images. However, we did have some students, while we didn't ask for them to share the images they saw online, we did have some surprised faces and some worried looks and some quick questions about privacy and accounts, especially with Instagram. A lot of students were able to see their entire picture roll from Instagram, and in many cases they were not aware that this was being shared publicly. And of course, that prompted us to launch into some purposeful conversations about social media usage, who these private companies are, what they're doing with our information, and how students can be a little more responsible about what they're posting. Truth of the matter is, with our junior class, with our population, we value our students greatly. They make some pretty good decisions. And so we knew they knew the right thing to do, even if they didn't actually do the right thing all the time. So we asked them, we put it out to them and said, who are you online? And we actually had an online anonymous question bank where they could submit responses in the classroom. And at first we started with bad social media practice, and then we changed up the conversation and talked about good, because we didn't want to frame social media as a bad thing. There are many positives to social media. So what did your students say? Your students talked about, with good things, things like connection and interaction. With bad things, things like cyberbullying, stalking, and what they phrased as creepers. Catfishing, which is the when people act like other people to get relationships or get things out of them. Racism and hate speech are some pretty common things that were so bad. Other good things that they said: meeting new people virtually, which you as a parent might think is good or bad. Me as a parent, I'm hearing that it's not such a good thing, but our children are seeing that as a good thing. Definitely networking is a positive, both for students and adults. When they meet people, to be able to establish that relationship online and touch base with that person, no matter what your geographic location. Other bad things that we talked about: identity theft. And we talked about things that they are sharing, things like posting your birth date on Facebook or on Instagram, and how people really don't need that many more pieces of information other than your full name and your birth date to start to establish an online identity as you. So to be careful about those things. Being tagged in a post with something inappropriate was a big one that we talked about, that we'll elaborate on in just a moment, in terms of how the context of a situation can be misconstrued, or how other people just looking at these things, such as a college admissions officer, can look at these things and not understand who you're with or where you're at or who you're talking to, or other aspects that you might want them to know, but they just don't. Back to other good things, some professional things that they talked about, some marketing oneself, building a portfolio for jobs, achievements, and college acceptances, so sharing those on an online environment. If you're an entrepreneur, being able to market your business, your product, or your service. Social and global good was a big thing that came up several times. A lot of our students are very active in helping others, and so being able to utilize social media in that respect. There's also things such as entertainment, which are common uses of social media. Dogs, puppies, cats, cute animals, unicorns, cats and cucumber videos. If you feel like going down a YouTube hole later, cats and cucumber videos are pretty hilarious. But our students are very active on this, and it's obviously, as long as it's appropriate, it's a fine use of entertainment for social media. If you didn't know this by now, your kids are really into memes. And a meme is basically sharing anything about, sharing on a viral nature, anything about our culture. It's usually done where kids will take snippets of different cartoons or movies or whatever, songs, and associate those in different situations. There's a lot of popular memes going around. It's pretty funny. Ask your students about it if you haven't already, what their favorite memes are, and then you can kind of see what they're looking at. Some of it will be ridiculous, but I often look back to my childhood and think about what I listened to or looked at, and my parents didn't often think it was as entertaining as I did. Online games was another thing that students were active in. We see this at a higher rate at our middle school campuses, more so than our junior level at high school. And procrastination was an interesting thing that came up. Of course, people wasting time on online platforms such as YouTube, as opposed to taking care of things they need to. Some practices that were questionable. Photos with friends. So when you're tagged in a photo with a friend, do you really need to have a purposeful conversation about what you want to be tagged in and what you don't want to be tagged in? If you're a person that doesn't want a big digital footprint, should you let your friends know not to tag you in things, or not to take pictures of you and post them publicly? There's some really good conversations around this. Obviously, that's a gray area. There's not a right and wrong answer. It's per individual. Birthday shout outs, again, making public when your actual birth date is. Is that a good thing to do? Is that a bad thing to do? There was a lot of conversation around that. Vacation photos and location tagging. We often encourage students, and practice this ourselves, not posting pictures from vacations, because this alerts the world that you are not at home, and in many situations could alert the wrong people that, hey, my house is vacant, and that could create some situations you really don't want to be in. Liking questionable posts was another one. Often on social media, people click the heart or the like button too quickly and don't realize the implications of that, that other people can see that they've done that, and they could be placed in a situation where they are now placed in a certain category of people or certain subculture just based on what they're liking. And of course, the red Solo cup. So we kind of used this as a metaphor. The context was you're at a party or a gathering, I should say, and you have a red Solo cup in your hand. And somebody from college admissions is looking at this. What do they think is in that red Solo cup? Not what is actually in it, but what do they think? And we use that as a metaphor for many things in terms of context. So we went on a outing with some students last week, and I decided to replicate this. So here's me at Capital Factory downtown with my red Solo cup full of Mexican cola, which was delicious. But I wanted to just kind of show it's not necessarily often clear what you're doing with those red Solo cups. They're often a metaphor for in our American culture for more of a party thing where students would be consuming alcoholic beverages, not students, but individuals. And so that was really a conversation we have with students, not just based on the actual red Solo cup, but again, using that as a metaphor and how that translates into things like talking trash to your friends online, college admissions, somebody that's trying to hire you wouldn't understand the context of that. They don't know that you've been best friends for years and years. So really being careful about what you're sharing publicly. And of course, that translated into a conversation about managing one's online life and conversations about what you're able to actually do, public versus private, and how you can actually influence your own account. It was surprising how many students were unaware of different privacy measures you can now take through social media platforms. Over the last couple of years, with Congress getting more involved, a lot of social media companies have taken an active role in giving us more autonomy in what we share publicly and what we're able to delete in terms of things that are posted on those social media platforms. So we were able to share with that. We encourage all parents to keep having those conversations. If you allow your child to utilize social media platforms, really drill down and look at those privacy policies and look at those settings availabilities and have those conversations with them. Maybe not necessarily because it's going to influence them now. At this point, you may want to tell them how to set those things, or you may not even want them on those social media platforms, but for later, because at some point, there's a strong possibility with the way things are going in this society that they will be on one of those social media platforms, if not many of those social media platforms, and they'll need to have that knowledge, that background knowledge about what they should do versus what they can do. That's a really important conversation that we try to have with our students. We know there's a lot of different values out there in terms of social media usage, and we want to be respectful of that. But from where Lisa and I come from, we really want students to have the knowledge to make those decisions, if not now, then later on down the road when they're making those decisions on their own. So please, if you want more information about social media privacy policies, student data privacy, general data privacy, please reach out to us at WHS EdTech, and we'll actually share that email address at the end of the session so that you can contact us on that. We left your students with some 4 basic tips about managing your online presence. Those tips are to keep it positive, even if they are, and I shared I've had the same friends for the last 30 years, 35 years. We grew up together, and so we do quote unquote talk a lot of trash, and so that could be definitely taken out of context if I was on a site on a professional account where I was talking to different friends. So on professional accounts, on outward-facing accounts that are associated with the individual's name, it's really important to keep an eye on that and make sure that they understand from an outsider's perspective. Professional sites are something we do encourage. We do not work for LinkedIn or anything like that, but we do encourage at least looking into, if not joining at some point, either now or in the future, professional sites to keep in contact with people that they meet from their life and to keep those network options open. Online communities linked to colleges are something that we're happy to look into for individuals that are looking at specific universities, it is really tough to go be an active part of Stanford University every week. But it's really easy to log on to an online community that's tied to that university, and then to actually tag that in an application process that you are actively involved in that. So if you'd like more information on that, of course, contacting the college admissions office or the student life office at a university would be a great way to do it. Lisa and myself can look into that as well. So students just need to reach out to us and let us know what university they're interested in. And of course, our counseling department would be happy to look into that. And of course, if students aren't happy with what they're doing online, we encourage students to change their story. If they don't like pictures they posted in the past, then go delete them. If they don't like the way they talk to people on social media, then change the way they talk. If they don't like everything about their account, close it, delete it, and start fresh if they still like to be on social media. So that's definitely an option at any point. The conversation then turned to a little more about some specific things that students can do about professional communication. So I'm going to pass it back off to Lisa Johnson.
Okay. So where we kind of went from this was putting your best digital foot forward. And I'm going to kind of get into a few things. So one of the first things that I mentioned was, and this is kind of alluding to talking to seniors and things like that, but really their email is going to be shut down. So we wanted to let them know if they are communicating with businesses or colleges or things like that, that they probably need to make sure they have some sort of personal email at this point in time. And that also that personal email is an appropriate email, not something like, I don't know, cooldude95@yahoo.com or something like that, that it would be more of a professional email. And so we kind of talked about that. We gave them a heads up that we will be coming back when they're seniors and talking to them about Google Takeout and how they can kind of take everything out that they want, especially college essays, things like that. And really even started encouraging them, you know, not today, not tomorrow, not even this month, but being cognizant of if they do have documents in Google Drive and things like that, that they may want to, especially essays and things of that nature, they may want to share with a personal account. We also got into resumes. I had updated my resume, I guess probably, that's 2015 or so. And so we're talking a little bit about, you know, in the next year, 2, 3, 4, 5, most likely they will have to build a resume of some sort. And I also talked to the counselors and we were talking about things that should be in a resume and things that shouldn't be, and how long resumes should be. So sometimes they will allow students to, you know, submit a resume within a college application. And what I was told from the counselors is that you really shouldn't be replicating your college application on your resume. It's, you know, if you have a bunch of AP courses or things like that, you know, you might mention GPA and things of that nature, but you don't have to list off every AP course. And you can kind of pare down the experience and things like that. I mean, yes, obviously have a date and the title you held if you were in a club or organization, the time frame, but you don't necessarily have to have every single thing that you did in that. That may end up going in the college application. So just kind of talking a little bit about that. We're looking at offering a few kind of camps or lunch and learn type opportunities for students who are interested in building resumes. This is actually something I worked with mentorship students on, and it's something we'll kind of open up to them. Something else we mentioned was if you just Google the top soft skills for 2019, which is always kind of a fun thing to do, you know, what are employers looking for? Then those 5 things come up: creativity, persuasion, collaboration, adaptability, and time management. And for sure, Mr. Hansen and I obviously work with creativity and collaboration and things like that. Those are things just kind of built into what we do in our profession and, you know, integrating technology into the curriculum. Time management is also something we've kind of focused on quite a bit through kind of the social emotional learning things that we've done, through talking to freshmen about, you know, distractions, and even through some of the calendars and planners that we have a digital planner that we offered this past semester. So things like that, we were just kind of making them aware of. The other thing, and I'm not going to click on these, but you can definitely go to these websites. They're still live. So the other thing that we looked at, and we'll also post the links in the YouTube video when it's done. So we also talked to them about the fact that every student here has access to Bulb. It is a portfolio site, and they can build portfolios very easily. This is one. You can see this is actually a former high school student. She has left us and already gone to Texas Tech, because you can see that kind of there. And then she has already graduated there and is going on to a graduate program. And so if they want to create a portfolio, looking at, and I really stressed, I said, don't feel like you have to do this. Don't feel like you have to overdo it either. Really think about what your passions are, what your kind of your buckets are. Like, what are the things that you really want to pursue? What are the things you feel like you're good at? What are the things you feel like you excel at? And so for Yasmin, it was art and architecture. And so each one of those actually opens up more information, and they almost look like a little blog post. So they'll have some pictures, they'll have different things like that. And so that was one sort of tool that we were talking to them about. This one that you can also visit is also a former student. He is currently at UT. And what I really like that he did with his, and you'll see, is rather than just doing the art and architecture or just like two buckets, he really kind of honed in on why those were important. So taking it kind of one step more. So you can see, yes, he did cross country, he did orchestra and violin, he had his own lawn mowing venture, and also did student council. But beyond those, he got into why those things were important and what soft skills kind of were embedded in those experiences. So building a relationship had to do with cross country, learning dedication and orchestra, or learning dedication through orchestra and violin, taking initiative. You can see lawn mowing ventures, making a difference, student council, and then he has some best samples here. So if you can kind of see, I'm pointing my arrow here. Anytime there's a stack right there, it means that this opens up almost like a folder into additional pieces. So we talked to students about this. Again, this tool is free to all of our students. They just have to sign in with their Eanes ISD Gmail account. And the good news is that even after they graduate, they can just change the email account and they still have access to this. It's great to add to a college application. It's great to add to a resume. And I can tell you, Yasmin had used it on her resume quite a bit. And I think it's a fantastic tool to be able to do. And honestly, I think a lot more things are looking at going to a portfolio model as well, especially for professionals. So those were kind of the main things that we mentioned. We also kind of left them with just a few things that we do. They know that we, integrate technology into the classroom and different things like that. In addition to that, obviously you can kind of see we've talked about resume building, online profile and portfolios, brand building, and individualization. So if there were things like they wanted to start a business or they wanted to kind of, work on a brand, if they were doing photography or whatever the case may be, those are things we'd happy to talk to them about as well. Our email is whsedtech@eanesisd.net. And the other thing that I'll mention is we're looking at some student lunch and learns. They are coming up Monday, March 11th and Tuesday, March 12th. They will be during basically both of the lunches. And we're looking at something like personal professional promotion. I like the alliteration of that. There'll be a sign-up form that's sent to students next week from our email, and we'll just be able to kind of give them support on some of the things that we've mentioned within this webinar a little bit more. The last thing I will mention is if you visit whsedtechs.weebly.com, you will have access to all of our webinars. We have 10 of them. This will actually be number 11, and we've covered a wide range of topics from dealing with fake news to social media to managing distractions to study skills. The list goes on and on. So as certain things we feel like are important or need to be addressed or, come up here, we tried to kind of put together some content for you and share it out. So again, if you have any questions, our email is whsedtech@eanesisd.net. Thank you so much for joining us. This is Lisa Johnson and Mr. Hanson over there.